Welcome again to Mel's Clever Crafts. So today we're making a patriotic wreath, and we're going to be using an 18-inch Dollar Tree frame as well as a bicycle wreath frame. So this is my list of supplies, and this is the layout of the petals that I'll be placing on the combined 18-inch wreath frame with the bicycle wreath frame. All right, so let's get started. So first I'm going to attach the bicycle frame to the 18-inch frame, and both of these were purchased from the Dollar Tree. Okay, so I'm just laying them out to see if it's better to attach it from the bottom or to the top. So the bottom seemed easier to do, so I'm just gonna use the zip ties similar to how you attach the canvas mesh to the wreath frame. That's what I'm gonna be doing, using the zip ties, and these ones are the 5-inch zip ties from the Dollar Tree. Use those to attach the bicycle frame to the 18-inch wreath frame. And I really like this. I think I like it better than the canvas mesh, the plastic canvas mesh, because I don't have to be tracing out anything and drawing anything, and the cost is about the same because a normal sheet of plastic canvas mesh would not span the inside diameter of this 18-inch frame. So the bicycle frame came in very handy, and it cost about the same, $1.25 per frame. And I don't have to trace anything or cut anything, so that took one less step out of the normal preparation of a metal wreath frame or wreath form. All right, so you see the bicycle frame was attached, and now we're going to be making the petals. So we're going to be making the Dean Michael daisy petal, and we're going to be using finished edge at top, finished at bottom, bottom right over top left, and then I'm going to scrunch it. Okay, so pretty much the scrunching is going to be gathering it in thirds until I bring the ends together. So I'm going to start by scrunching and then bringing one side, bringing the other side, and then I'm just going to keep gathering until I get all the ends in, including those little wings. And with this, I learned from one of my fellow YouTubers, 2D. She taught us how to make these petals flat. So I've always been seeing the petals flat, and I was always wondering how they got them so flat. Did they like put a weight on them or something? And she was so cool. She showed us how to do that, and I'll put a link to her tutorial as well of how she formed these petals, because she pretty much made the petal, right? But after she made it, she pretty much just push it out as I'm doing right there. So what I did, pre-made the petals and held it together using those rubber bands. So it's like those rubber band hair ties, and I used the transparent ones. So again, we're going to be making the petals. So finished up at the finished side or factory side at the top, and factory side at the bottom for this petal. So you see, that's how I have it, and this is my container of rubber bands. And then you're going to bring bottom right over to the top left. I was trying something different, but that didn't feel natural to me, so I'm just going to change it. Bottom right over to the top left corner, and you try to just flatten it as best as possible and line up the points as best as you can. And that's what I'm doing here, trying to line them up, keep them together, and then the same process. So hold it down, and then I'm going to scrunch the middle third of this triangle. So hold the points together. You could even use some clips, some crafting clips to hold the points together, but I'll just use my fingers. My fingers are fairly long, they can span. And then I'll just gather it until I get all those little pieces together. I'm folding the wings, and then I'll hold it together again with that little rubber band. And these are rubber bands that I purchased on Amazon. I found them to be quite efficient to pre-make those petals, and just have them there, and then all you have to do is attach them as you go along. So after securing the petal with the rubber band, I'm just gonna flatten it by pretty much pushing it out. So holding the two tips together, the two tips of that leaf. And again, I'll link to this tutorial on here because of how my desk is set up. I use like a desk riser because this is my crafting room / my office. I apologize that you're not able to see the full process of me pushing that out, but I'll link to this tutorial so you can see how she gets her petals really nice and flat. Alright, so it's the same process I use for the three colors. So this is the navy blue poly burlap that I'm using, and then the others will be the red and the white poly burlap. And for the entire wreath, I used a total of 48 petals. So the outer petals were just the navy blue petals, and this was a total of 24 petals that I used for the blue. And then the second layer was an alteration between red and white. So that bicycle frame, it has 12 spokes on there, and each spoke I put one on there. So the second layer, which was red and white, it had 6 red and 6 white. And then I had a third layer, which was the same thing, alternating red and white. So 6 red and then 6 white. So total of 12 reds, 12 whites. So 24 blues, navy blue that is, and then 12 red and 12 white petals. And that would be a little bit over a roll. So from one roll, I can get about 32 or 34 petals, depending on how precise I cut them to 10 inches. You'll get about 32 to 34 petals, which is 10 by 10 petals from one roll of poly burlap. So you'll need 2 rolls to do this project. And of course you could add more petals on there if you want. So instead of just having 3 layers of petals, you could probably make it 4. But I'm just not a fan of the bulk too much, but maybe I'll experiment a little bit more with it and see what happens. So here I'm just continuing with the blue petals, and then I'll just speed up the rest of it after. This is just to show you what I'm doing to get those petals together and pre-made. So I finished making all the blue petals, and I want to see if what I have is going to be enough. So this bicycle frame, not bicycle, this 18-inch frame, it has 8 bars on it. So I like, okay, I need 8. And then I was thinking that maybe in between each bar I'd only need 1 petal. But then after I did that, actually got to the second row before I was like, no, I don't like this. I had to call my mom and be like, Mommy, can you look at this for me and tell me what you think? And it just looked too scant. So I ended up adding 2 petals in between on the 18-inch frame, which is the outer frame. And if you noticed, I didn't put the petal on the outermost ring on that 18-inch frame. I put it on the second ring, right? And that helps to give your petals a little bit of stability, so it gets to lean on to that outer ring. So it gives it a little bit of stability right there. So I added the second petal, and that's the one that's going in between the bars of this wreath frame. And then I'll just add the one on the bar. But again, remember, just look at the picture that I placed on the supplies list, and that's what the end result was. I started out, as I said, thinking that okay, it would look fine with just having 3 petals per section, but it didn't look good. It looked bare. It needed more fluff. And that's where I said you can add another layer if you wanted, instead of just using 3 layers. So you could possibly add a 4th layer, and that also determines the size of the center that you'll be using, right? So the more you have, the more layers you have, the smaller your center can be, because the tighter that center will become, right? So that's my first section. So all right, so finished the outer layer, and then we're on to the second layer. And as you see, I'm alternating. So I'm putting 1 petal onto each spoke. And then I didn't need the petals to go too much to the top of the blue petals. So they're about halfway down. So the tip of the second row of petals is about halfway down on the outer blue petals. So again, just alternating red and white on the second layer, and we'll just go around and do that. And what I try to do, I try to lay the petals in such a way that the petal that's coming after, you'll have the finished edge covering over the raw edge of the previous petal that I laid down. And I try to do that because it's poly burlap and it does fray. So the more you touch it, the more it will fray. So the less you have to touch it, it would be better. So all my finished edges on these petals, they're gonna be on the left side, and that's what you'll see here. The left side is the one that's on top. So this cutter that I use, I purchased it on Amazon. It's a diagonal cutter, they call it, and it's really handy. You could use a scissor, but because of how this is shaped, it makes it so much easier to cut the zip ties. So and this second layer, it's gonna be the same way that the third layer is going to look. As you see in the finished product, it's going to be the red and white alternating. All right, so if there was a white on the spoke before, I'd put a red. So right here you'll see like I'm doubling. So I was putting, again, when you're doing these things, you have a vision and then it doesn't really work out, right? So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I don't have to put 12 when I get to the last layer, which is the third layer. But then after I put 6, by doubling, so wrapping the zip tie around 2 spokes, I didn't like how it looked either. So I ended up adding more. And that's why I said the finished product had 12 on the second layer and then 12 on the third layer as well. So this one is gonna look like it's 6, but in the end I ended up undoing those and just adding them 1 on each bicycle spoke. And that's why it's the same thing with the outer petal. I started by using 3 per section, and then in the end I didn't like it and I turned it into 4. So for best guidance, just follow the picture that I showed on the supplies page at the beginning. So here I'm just gonna show you how I made the center for this flower. So I'm using that foam disc from the Dollar Tree. So these you can purchase from the Dollar Tree, which should be now a $1.25 tree, and they come in a set of 2, and so you get two for $1.25. So what I do is just push a little indentation in the center. You don't push it all the way through, you don't have to do that. Using that scissor, and then I'm just using, that's why you don't waste anything in crafting, there's always a use for it. So this is a piece of canvas mesh, leftover canvas mesh, and I'm just gonna cut 2 squares out of it, and those 2 squares are gonna be used by me as reinforcement for those 2 chenille stems that I'm gonna be using to attach the center to the wreath. So I just add a little glue, and then I'm just gonna put that 1 square of canvas mesh onto that edge and just hold it down a little bit. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the opposite side of that piece of that foam disc and put that other square on there. And it doesn't have to be 1 square, it can be a little bit bigger, which I was doing before, but then I realized it was completely unnecessary to have more than 1 square to do that. And then I'm just using a paper clip to push a hole through that square, that piece of canvas mesh square that I put on there. Normally I would have my metal rat tail comb, but I could not find it. Again, find multiple uses for tools. And this hole that I'm pushing through, it's gonna help me to put that chenille stem through this foam disc. And this is what I'm going to be using to attach the center, the finished center, to the wreath frame. And I find this to be a very good alternative. I've never tried to use that felt on the bottom and use the floral pins to hold or to secure the chenille stem or the wire to the base of a flower center, because I'm not very good at using the glue, and I just think if it's coming from the top, it would be more reinforcement. So I'm scared of it just falling off and then just falling apart. So I prefer this method of securing it. I think it's way stronger and it won't pull through, and that's why you put the plastic canvas mesh up there, so that you can pull on it. It would have to tear through that plastic canvas, and it's a thick piece of plastic, so it would be harder to tear through. So that's what I'm doing there, just attaching the chenille stem before I start using that piece of cord to make the center. So this cord, it's a red, white and blue paracord, and I think I got this from the Dollar Tree. And why I said I think is because I purchased it a while back, and I purchased a bunch as well from Home Depot. So I think this one was from the Dollar Tree. So there, I'm just making that indentation a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, so that it will be able to hold the tip of this piece of cord. So then I'm putting the tip into that hole. So you saw I put the glue in there first, and then I put the tip in there, and then I'm just gonna hold it down a little bit until the glue is almost dry. Right? So I hold it down a little bit before I start trying to manipulate it and putting it into those swirls or concentric circles. And these finger protectors, they are super helpful. I also got those from Amazon. I bought those on Amazon, and they're so helpful because, oh boy, the glue burned me this time, and I've like hot glue I've gotten on my finger before, but this one was super hot. Maybe I've never gotten burned by the glue coming from this one, because it says it has high temp and low temp settings. So maybe that's what that was, but it was super hot. So when you're using the hot glue gun, I would definitely recommend, if you don't already have finger protectors, to buy some. The Dollar Tree also sells them, but I don't really like the ones that's coming from the Dollar Tree because they don't really fit my fingers as well. It's almost like they're cutting off my circulations, but these ones, they're stretchy, so they fit out a bit better. And you'll notice I'll be pulling a lot of strings from my glue when I'm putting the glue down, and I'm thinking maybe because my workspace is directly below an AC vent that's in our office, and I'm thinking that's possibly a contribution as to why my glue dries so fast. So I'm just taking my time, putting little bits of glue down and putting that cord around in circles. So taking my time to do that, and to also lay it in such a way that it doesn't look too bumpy, and everything is going to look as close as possible to being on the same level, and so that the stripes can also flow. So when you're doing this process, it just take your time. The starting point is always a bit more challenging, and as the circle gets bigger, it's gonna become easier because you'll have a bigger space to work with. So just take your time, and the cords, they will get a bit tied up on themselves, so you'll have to occasionally untie them and undo them. So just take your time, add a little bit of glue, and I have actually three glue guns, but I bought this one last because I needed a finer tip for projects such as these, because I have a Shore Bonder, the one that's cordless, as well as you can use it corded, but the tip of it is too big, and that one doesn't seem like it take the specialty tips where I can get smaller tips for it. So I had to get this other glue gun for these projects, so I have less glue showing. And if for any reason you put too much glue out, I would just recommend that you try to use the cord and just squish it in so you have less glue showing, because it can get a bit tricky. So here it's just the same process. You put a little bit of glue, bring it around and around, and I'm gonna bring it all the way around till the edges. So this is I'm showing you I'm doing the edges. So I got to the edge, and you just put it there, similar to what you were doing when it was on the top, and then you just bring it down and hold it close to the one that you laid down before. Right? And if it doesn't lay close the first time, you probably just have to leave it like that, because again, the glue will get dry. It may look transparent, but if you look closely, you'll be able to see it, and you don't really want too much of that to be showing. The less of that can be shown, the more appealing your project will look. Because this center that I have, I actually made one before, but that was when I was using that glue gun that has the wider tip, and so I had so much glue that was showing, and it could be okay just to take the picture with, I think, but I didn't want to take that chance because my eyes are very keen on things, and I just didn't want to put something out that didn't look, at least I was proud of the way it looked. So I just kept that as an example for me to remind me of where I started out from, and how I've gotten better at this craft. So yeah, just keep going. Just wrapping the cord around the foam disc until you get to the end, which is the base of it. And you can wrap it around a little bit on the base, and that's it right there. That's the end of it. You cut off your extra, and then you glue your end down. And I put a little bit of glue also on the end of the cord to hopefully not have it fray. Because these cords, when you cut them, you'll see some, like, it start to frazzle out at the end. Right, so I'm just picking off all my glue that's actually drying up. But yeah, that's my center. So now I'm just gonna attach it to the wreath frame, and how I'll attach it is I'll wrap the chenille stem, so each chenille stem will be wrapped around like a pair of those bicycle spokes, and then I'll secure it at the back, similar to how we attach the other ones to the other wreath. So there you go. Just taking my time to attach it, and then you want to make sure you position it as well so that you're not seeing the ends of your petals. So this is the back of the frame, and then you just twist your chenille stems. I don't have any set amount of times I twist it. Some people do too, but I'll just be twisting because it just feels fun. And then you may cut off the extra chenille stems, or you can just leave them there. I'll just lay them there flat, and then you cover the back with a piece of felt so it looks more presentable, and of course presents less danger of someone possibly scratching their door or their wall with the pieces of chenille stems in the back, and depending on how your zip ties were attached, with the zip ties as well. All right, so that's the back of the wreath, and this is the finished wreath. So as always, when you're finished attaching, that won't be the end of it. You'll still want to like just position your petals to how you like. So here's the finished product. I hope you like it. I really loved it. I think this is my neatest flower wreath so far. So again, thank you so much for watching, and if you have not already subscribed to my channel, I would really appreciate if you do, and hit that post notification bell so when I have new projects out, you will see. Thank you.